Then, as I told you, connect the subject with the verb. And while doing this question, you need to focus on only and only on that particular sentence that you're trying to locate. Moving on to some other category of questions, we'll return to the subject-verb agreement question type also. So let me just mention all the various category of questions you get, as I told you, in the English section of ACT. So you have, first of all, you have subject-verb agreement questions. Along with that, sometimes you get the tenses part of grammar which needs to be looked at in these questions. Then we have pronoun agreement questions. Now, this basically is just like your verb should match the subject of the sentence, your pronoun should match the noun for which it is being used. So we'll discuss this topic also in detail. Then we have modifiers. Modifiers are basically the words or phrases that have been added to the sentence to add some more meaning to that particular noun, pronoun, or the subject part of it. We'll talk about how you get these questions, what type of modifier errors you get to see in the test. Then you have parallelism. Parallelism is like, you may have all the correct ingredients in the sentence. It might be that the structure looks a little awkward. In that case, you need to use the words that are parallel to each other. So we're going to discuss those as well. And then we have idioms. Now, idioms here basically means the phrasal verbs. With the verbs, when you add specific prepositions, they change meaning and they have very specific meaning attached to them. So when you say abide, you have to say by, you can't say to, or you can't say with. So this type of questions technically come under idioms section. And then we have one more category of questions from grammar section. This is called faulty comparison. So you're comparing two things, but maybe the format in which you're comparing is wrong, or the words you're comparing technically are different parts of speech, as in you cannot compare a noun with an adjective or an adjective with an adverb and so on. So we'll discuss a few examples of these questions. So subject-verb agreement and tenses question, if we talk about total number of questions it contributes to this English section of the ACT, you normally get about 5 to 6 questions from subject-verb agreement. So that's like a very, very important topic to do. Pronoun in ACT, you get about 3 to 4 questions from pronouns. And some of these questions are very easy provided you know the concept. Modifiers, we usually get about 2 or 3 questions. Parallelism, again, 2 to 3 questions. Idioms, there are plenty, I mean, maybe 4 to 5 questions. And faulty comparison, again, you get about 2 to 3 questions and sometimes even more number of questions. Now, let's take up these topics one by one. Subject-verb agreement. When it is a pure subject-verb agreement question, you know, all you need to do, as I said, is to focus on the subject and then locate the verb that's parallel in structure to that particular subject. If your subject is singular, your verb should be singular. Right, and then you also have a tenses element to it, as in, you know that you need a plural verb, but that verb might be one option might have the verb in the past tense, other may have it in the present tense, or even when all are in present tense, one might be continuous, one might be perfect tense, one might be perfect continuous tense. So you need to figure out which tense is the right one to use there. And in ACT, and that's what you don't get in SAT, in ACT you get questions purely on tenses also. Like all the options, they won't test you for verb agreement. They might just test you on tenses itself. So one option might have had, other would have simple past. The other one might have had been, one might have a was. So you need to check the tense very, very carefully. Now, for subject-verb agreement, as I said, you need to focus only and only on that sentence. Remove the extra pieces. There are two kinds of extra pieces in a subject-verb agreement question. One is the interrupters, as in you have a word or a phrase or a clause which is in paired commas, one comma on this side, one comma on the other side. In that case, that phrase or clause is unnecessary. You can cut that out so that you don't get confused in choosing the correct subject. The other type of extra piece you get in subject-verb agreement question is a prepositional phrase, a phrase that starts with a preposition. And that's an extra piece. We'll be doing a few questions from the actual ACT paper wherein I'll show you how you get those prepositional phrases and why it is so important to remove those extra pieces. Then you also need to pay attention to words like and. If you have and between two subject words, howsoever singular it sounds, it has to be a plural subject. And so you should use a plural verb there. Giving you a simple example, if I say there, dash, a man and a child in the park. When I say a man and a child, when you want to put a verb there, you will be tempted to choose is, but that will be wrong answer because you have a man and a child, and this and adds the two words together, and you must use a plural verb there. So these are some basic rules of subject-verb agreement. Next is pronoun agreement. Pronoun agreement question can come in variety of ways. The most common is just locate the noun for which you've used it and check, is it masculine? Then use a masculine pronoun. So it may be a gender-based question, or it may be a singular plural thing. Your noun is plural and the pronoun is singular, or vice versa. Or it may be a pronoun case issue. Pronoun case as in you need to use a pronoun in subject form and they've put in a me there. Me is an object case of the pronoun, not a subject case. Or you needed an object case me and they've put in an I. So you need to change that I to me. The other type of questions in pronouns might be ambiguous pronouns, as in you have lots and lots of nouns in the previous sentence or the same sentence, and then you're using a pronoun for one of those, and it's confusing. People may not be able to figure out for which particular noun you've chosen this pronoun. And in that case, the correct usage is to remove that pronoun and use a noun instead, so that there is no ambiguity or confusion there. So that's pronoun agreement. Next is modifiers. Now, modifier errors are basically of two kinds, and they are very tricky questions because when we speak, even in our mother tongue, we make a lot of modifier errors without actually realizing that we are making those errors. There are two types of modifier errors you get to see in the test and you need to correct them. One is misplaced modifier error. Misplaced, as the name suggests. So all the words are correct in the sentence. Only the positioning is awkward, and that's leading to a very different meaning than what you wanted to convey. For example, if I say she served sandwiches to her children on a plate. When I say she served sandwiches to her children on a plate, the sentence suggests that the children are on a plate. So she served sandwiches to her children on a plate. Children on a plate. That's absurd, obviously. So how do you correct it? You just pick this word from here, the phrase from here, and put it close to the word it was supposed to modify. So the correct version of the sentence would be, she served sandwiches on a plate to her children. So it's the sandwiches which are on the plate. This is called a misplaced modifier error. Other type of mistake you get to see in modifiers is a dangling modifier. Dangling as in you have the modifying phrase, a phrase that's adding meaning to a particular word there. That's why you call it a modifier. But that phrase is hanging in the middle. The word that it was supposed to modify is missing. You don't have it there. And that's why it leads to an awkward meaning. A simple example may be, while running for the bus, comma, my book fell in the mud. If I let the sentence be like this means that the book was running for the bus. While running for the bus, my book fell in the mud. Obviously, the book cannot be the one who's running. It's I who am running. So I need to correct it. I need to add a subject to it so that the meaning becomes proper. And that's why we call this error a dangling modifier error. So we correct this as we correct this as while I was running for the bus, comma, my book fell in the mud. So I repeat, there are two types of errors in modifiers. You have the dangling modifiers and you have the misplaced modifiers. Misplaced modifiers, all you need to do is to correct the sequence of the words. And dangling modifier, you need to add a proper subject to it and then it becomes totally fine. Next category of questions is parallelism. Parallelism is again, I mean, when you're speaking casually or you're reading a text, you won't mind having parallelism errors there. But when it comes to correct English, obviously the mistake looks very awkward and you need to rectify the sentence. If I say, she loves singing and to dance, when you speak it, it sounds awkward because not because the words are incorrect, but because the structure is not the same. The two words you're using, the two adjectives you're using here, they are not parallel to each other. And that's leading to some disturbance in spontaneity of the sentence. So how do you correct this error? You either change the one without the ing to the one with the ing, or you need to make both of them infinitives. So you can either say she loves singing and dancing, or you say she loves to sing and dance. This is called parallelism errors. There can be variety of parallelism errors. One might be parallelism in tenses, as in you have two clauses in the sentence and they are in different tense forms. You may have a parallelism error where you've used a gerund and an infinitive, while both should be the same structure, as I gave you an example of. You might have different verb forms parallelism error. So we'll be picking up a question or two on parallelism from the actual ACT paper. That will give you an idea how you get to see those errors in the form of the questions and how do you correct those errors then. Next is idioms. As I explained earlier, idioms are basically prepositional, phrasal verbs. The prepositions or particles you attach to the verb which lead to very specific meanings. And some verbs are such that they take, or even adjectives are such that they take very specific particles after them. And there are no rules you can learn for idioms. All, these are all conventional usages. So you need to know which word takes what particle after it. Like abide will always take by, subscribe will take to, Involve may take in or with, depending upon what meaning you want to convey. And then there are some words which can take variety of particles, but the meaning they convey are very, very different. Like take to is to like something. Take after is to resemble something. Take off is to fly or something that gets going. Right? So different words, different particles can change the meaning of the verb, and you must specifically know how to correct this. Now, when you get idioms questions, since there are no rules, you might end up making a few errors in these questions when you're doing the preparation for the ACT. So how do you get better in the idiom questions? Simply make a list of all the idioms that you get to see on the practice questions you do, and then keep on noting down or highlighting the idioms where you made mistakes while you were doing a test or you were doing a question. And then make sure you remember that idiom correctly thereafter and you don't repeat the same mistake. So this way, after you've done sufficient number of questions, you would know a variety of idioms, and they tend to get repeated. I mean, it's not that you need to know each and every idiom that exists. The ones that normally appear in questions are the ones that you get to see again and again. Coming to faulty comparison, that's the last category of questions in grammar section. Now, faulty comparison is like you're comparing two things, but you're not comparing them in the correct format. You can't compare an adjective with a verb or a noun with an adjective. Similarly, you can't compare, for example, if you say my house is more beautiful than you, that's obviously absurd and incorrect. You compare a house with a house. So my house is more beautiful than yours or your house. If you put you there, that will be faulty comparison. Or other category of questions, in other variety of questions in this topic can be choosing between much or more. So much is uncountable, more is countable, or many is countable. And then choosing between little and less. So little is uncountable, less is countable. So few, then you should also know the difference between a few, the few, and few. All these variety of questions basically fall into this category called faulty comparison. All right, so that was an introduction to variety of questions that you get to see. Now, let's do a few questions and let's see how whatever we discussed actually gets to appear in the test. So I'll just share my screen. I'll open a test there. This is actual ACT paper. So all questions we'll discuss right now will be real ACT questions. Okay, so we start with the verb agreement and tenses questions. Look at question number 6. During flakes' descent from Earth's upper atmosphere, other water molecules bumps into hexagonal structure. So when I say other water molecules, so I'm talking about molecules here, and that's obviously plural. I cannot take a singular verb here. Bumps is singular, so that goes out. Has bumped is also singular, that goes out. Now between bumped and bump, since I'm talking all of it in the present tense, so now between H and J, the question is not, it's not a subject verb agreement question. It's basically choosing the correct tense. And for choosing the correct tense, as I told you earlier, you need to check the tense of the entire paragraph. If we look at other verbs that have been used, they are all in present tense. And that's why this should also, and anyways, we are describing a scientific phenomena, so it should be in present tense only. And since we are saying molecules, it cannot be bumps, it has to be bump. That's the plural form here. And that's why the answer would be J and not the other options, right? So that's one typical ACT question on subject-verb agreement and tenses that you get to see. Okay, taking one more question on subject-verb agreement. Just a moment. That's question number 17. So here it is. Now this is a very good question and the tricky one too. Question number 17. It was August, our clothes were stifling, but we would have needed the warmth from our bodies sealed around us as we hiked into the high altitudes. So you can see this is something that happened in the past you're talking, was, were. And if you look at these options, this one says will need. So that's future tense. This cannot be the correct verb. This one says need. That's present tense, cannot be the correct verb here because you don't jump between the tenses in the same sentence. Now, would have needed is also past, would need is also past. Now choosing between A and B, would have needed is a conditional, something that could have happened and did not happen. So you're not talking of any conditional, you're simply saying something that was to happen at that time. I mean, you would need clothes. So this is we call it future in the past, as in since that did not happen at that point in time, it was a thing of future. And since now it is past, you will say would and not will. So the answer has to be B. And this is not a subject verb agreement question because you did not have to choose between a singular plural thing. This was a pure tenses question because you had to choose the correct tense here. Now C was easy out because it was in future tense and the entire paragraph is in past. D was also out for the same reason. This is present tense verb and you needed a past tense verb. Between the other two, it was a little bit tricky, but you can see you're not saying this could have happened or should have happened or would have happened. You're not talking a conditional here, you're talking about a simple incident, so you would say would. Okay, moving on. Then we move to next category of questions, which is pronoun agreement. So we have 3 questions in this test which are based on this topic. I'll try and take at least 2. Yeah, question number 37. His search for their creator led him to Meta Ortiz. When I say search for the creator, and options are led him, lead himself, led himself, and lead him. Number 1, you're talking past tense here, were. The entire thing, if you read, it's all past tense. You can't use a present tense verb. That means B and D are totally out. They cannot be the answer because they are present tense verbs and you need a past tense. Now between A and C, is he leading himself or is the search leading him somewhere? Obviously, it's the search leading him. Subject is search and not he. That means himself is a wrong usage here. Himself you use only when the doer and the receiver of the action are the same. So you say he hurt himself. You use himself only when the subject and the object are the same. That's not the case here. Here the subject is search, so himself won't fit in. That means A is the answer. So this is a pronoun question. You needed to choose between himself and him, and it was also a tenses question in a way, because you needed to choose between lead and led. That's present tense and the past tense. One more question on pronoun agreement. Yeah, let's take this one. Although 42, 43, both are pronouns. Let's take 43. That's the interesting one. Each artist brought something unique to their creations, his or herself's creations, hers or his creations, and his or her creations. This looks like a funny question because some of these are really awkward formations. You don't have herself, number one. It has to be a plural, singular thing. You're talking of one, and selves is plural, so this goes out. Then when you're saying his, you'll say her, you'll not say hers, because that's the wrong pronoun form here. Now, choosing between they are and his or her, obviously, when you have an apostrophe after they, that means they are. And you're referring to possession here, so it has to be either their or his or her. And even if A option was there, that would make it a good question. This, there. Choosing between this, there and his or her would make it a good tricky question. And since each artist, you're talking about one at a time here, you would obviously say his or her and not their. Had it been artists, then the pronoun would be there because that's the plural form. But when you say artist, that's one at a time, you'll say his or her, you'll not say their. So that's how you get the pronoun questions in the test. Moving on to next category, and that's like the tricky one. That's modifier questions. We have one in the test here, question number 4. And I hope you remember I told you about misplaced modifiers and dangling modifiers. Now, looking at this question number 4, this looks like a scary question, but is really easy. Let's read this out. By recreating snowflake formation. By recreating snowflake formation. Who will recreate the formation? It cannot be a discovery. So this one is absurd. It cannot be the discovery again. It's absurd. It cannot be the cause. It's the people who will create or recreate something when they are experimenting or trying to figure out how something happens. So it has to be people who do it. And that's why H is the correct answer. Can you see I didn't have to even read the whole question. It is so easy. It's just that once you get the logic of these modifier questions correct, you never get this question wrong, and then it becomes like 1 second question to do. So you'll always find at least one question like this. Read this phrase carefully. You get to know what it is talking about. It usually talks about a person or people who did something. And so obviously right after the comma, you have to have a person or multiple people mentioned here. Any other word would make it a wrong answer. So this is like the easiest of all questions, but quite a few people I've seen struggle with this one. So we've discussed 3 types of question examples from the actual ACT paper already. I've shown you verb agreement and tenses questions. I've shown you pronoun agreement questions, and I've shown you modifier questions. Now let's move on to parallelism question. We have 2 or 3 here. Let's pick one. Now, question number 8. This is a pronoun question here. Let's read the whole sentence carefully. In 2009, Liberet and Arnold's experiments revealed that triangular snowflakes begin with the same process of chemical bonding and forms. Can you see a mismatch here? This one says begin and this one says forms. And if I look at the subject, it's snowflakes, which is plural. So snowflakes begin, and obviously this one should be form, and then they'll be parallel to each other. They are in the same form and they are in the same format also. If we read other options, if they formed, were they are all complicated forms. You have one simple verb here, which is in simple present tense, and you're talking about the same thing, just 2 actions. So this one also should be exactly same format, which is simple present tense. You don't even need to look at other options. This has to be the one. And this one is incorrect because you're talking about a plural thing and you have a plural thing and you have a singular verb here. That makes it a wrong option. So this is a simple parallelism question, and ACT, the questions are not that tricky. It's just that you work at a very, very high speed here. You need to do questions in 75 questions in 45 minutes. That's what makes it tricky, because when you're running so fast, you end up getting a little careless here or there, and that can make you do mistakes. Okay, so next is idiom questions. Idioms, let's move to question number 19. Now, this is again very interesting question to do. Question number 19. This is an idiom question. At each one, we noted the roof piled high on. The roof is piled high, roof piled high on fallen rocks, and felt both unsettled and reassured. Now, if I read this out, number one, piling would be wrong because this is not happening right now. It had happened, we just were observing it. So piling is wrong tense form here, so these two go out. When you say pile, you always say with, you never say on. So that means A is wrong as well because of the idiom, incorrect idiom. So the correct idiom is piled high with. So that has to be the answer then. So this is like a mix of tenses question and idiom question. So idiom is you need to choose between on and with, and tense is where you need to choose between piling and piled. And since you're talking about something you observed had happened, it did not happen in front of you, was not happening at that time, so it cannot be piling, it has to be piled. All right, so this was a typical idiom question mixed with the tenses format. Now, one more question, and that would be the last one. This is on faulty comparison, question number 11. Okay, so this is the one we're doing. Question number 11. This is called faulty comparison. Let's read the question sentence. One moment. So this is question number 11. Yeah. Yeah, this is the one we are talking about. question number 11. The greater the pressure from the wind causes bonds to form quick at this edge than. Can you see a than here? Than means you're comparing the two things. So than tells you it has to be in comparative form. Now, if you look at the options, though this sentence is a bit awkward when you read it without correcting question number 10, but anyways, if we read only this statement or only this part of the sentence, we can see than, you have a than here, which is comparative. Quickest is not comparative, you cut that out. Most is superlative, not comparative, you cut that out. And if you read A, this is quick, this is pure adjective, neutral adjective. You don't have, you call it a positive adjective. You don't have a comparative form here also. So the only option that has the comparative form here is B, more quickly than something. So the moment you say than, it has to be more or comparative degree. And that's why you don't have to look at other options even. You can simply choose B because that's the correct version of it. So this was a brief introduction on a variety of topics you get in the grammar section and how to answer these questions. Obviously, reading a little bit of more theory in detail would help you in getting more confident in answering these questions. So some of you have asked about which book should you be reading for this particular section of the ACT. Then there are two books I can suggest. One is College Panda ACT English. The other very good resource to refer to is Erica Mills ACT English. So I guess I'm through with the session. Over to you.
It was really a great session, ma'am. Got to know more about this particular section, about grammar, about the content part and all. I guess students must be very much clearer about this section by far. So this was the last session, students, for the day. I thank you for maintaining your tempo and waiting till the last session. So if in case you have any queries related to this thing, you can surely get back to Monika ma'am or Abhinav sir related to this. And I guess if in case Monika ma'am, you could share any of your official email ID.
Yeah, mine is, should I type this out? mnkgrg@gmail.com.
Okay, I'll just type it.
Yeah, mnkgrg@gmail.com. I can share my screen and type it out if you wish. One moment. So this is mnkgrg@gmail.com. So you can use this one. All right, so I've already suggested them a few good resources you can refer to. Someone is asking, these books are quite expensive, so any substitute. Unfortunately, these are the only two good books that I can refer. I've personally gone through quite a few books that are available, but they are not worth using. So these are the two resources they can use.
Okay, I guess all the questions have been answered and all the queries have been clearer. So thank you once again, ma'am, for today's session. So see you all students on the next Sunday to continue our SAT test prep series. Thank you, ma'am, once again. Bye-bye.
Most welcome. Bye-bye. Good night. Yeah.